This video will teach you how to survey and treat your clients' properties for little fire ants. I'd like to take a quick second to say mahalo to our funders who helped us create this video. We received aid from the Hawaii Tourism Authority, National Science Foundation, Stanford University, the Hawaii Invasive Species Council, the Hawaii County Council, and the Change Happens Foundation. So what is an invasive species? An invasive species is something that has been introduced either intentionally or by accident that causes harm to the environment, economy, or to our health and way of life. 10 to 15% of all things that get to Hawaii have the potential to become invasive, and little fire ants do all three of these things. I'll talk about, first off, how little fire ants are a threat to our environment. Fire ants can make natural areas unusable and harm native species. They can be aggressive to other insects, and oftentimes when there's a high infestation of little fire ants, there are no other insect species in the area. In an area with high little fire ant population, it also makes these areas unusable. Little fire ants can also have a huge effect on Hawaii's economy. Ants have the ability to ranch pest insects like mealybugs and whiteflies, feeding off the honeydew they create and moving them from plant to plant. This leads to farmers having to spend more money on pesticides to control the increase in pests, and also controlling disease and funguses that go hand in hand with these type of insects. It becomes hard to find workers that want to harvest produce like the picture with the lychee. Nobody wants to come into work when there's little fire ants getting rained on them. If LFA are unmanaged, it is predicted it will cost the agricultural industry about $1.25 billion over the next 10 years. LFA are a huge threat to our health and way of life. They cause painful itching stings that can even blind pets. LFA can live happily up to 20,000 ants per square meter, which is unlivable for any human being. With the current level of management of little fire ants, it's estimated that everyone gets to share 2.3 billion more stings in the next upcoming years. Little fire ants, or Wasmannia auropunctata, are an interesting species of ants. Unlike some other ants, LFA are arboreal, meaning they like to live in trees rather than creating dirt mounds. They can survive anywhere where they can find a little bit of shade and moisture. They are not territorial between themselves and create 3D supercolonies. This means they have many queens in one nest, and they branch out over a large area over the ground and into the canopy. They create these super colonies by a process called budding. When a queen decides that their nest is reaching full capacity, she'll take a few workers with her and move to a new location close by. This new nest will stay in contact and work with the old one. At very high densities, there can be anywhere from 30 to 70 queens in just a few feet. LFA was first detected in Hawaii in 1999. It was accidentally brought in with a live plant shipment from Florida. This map was completed in 2002, and by then the ants had been found all the way from Lapahoihoi to Kapoho. This was already too widespread to be eradicated completely. Because LFA are still being spread around the island, everyone needs to be careful in bringing new things onto their property. Always check them for ants, and don't move items that are known to have LFA. Some things that are commonly found on are potted plants, mulch, cinder, and building materials. Do not illegally dump green waste. This is a very possible way that LFA get into remote places that are extremely hard to treat. When bringing anything new onto your property, always ask yourself these two questions. Where did this thing come from, and what is the chance of it containing little fire ants? Remember that little fire ants can hitchhike on anything that has been sitting for a long period of time. We have found them in some unusual things like old cars, porta potties, and road fill. To see if something you're trying to move around has little fire ants, or if you're working on a new property and trying to determine the population of fire ants, you always want to do a survey. Use a very thin smear of peanut butter on a chopstick or something similar and place it on the ground and in the trees. Place it in shady areas when you can and avoid putting it in full sun. Don't poke the stick straight into the ground, make sure to lie it flat. Wait about 30 minutes to an hour before collecting the sticks, and if you did find little ants on it, collect the samples and store it in the freezer overnight. If you wish to get your frozen ant samples identified, you can either bring it to our office or mail it in. Our address is 23 East Kawili Street, Hilo, Hawaii 96720. These are some of the common hotspots where LFA are almost always found. If you have any of these on your property, make sure to leave a chopstick there while surveying. Rock walls provide lots of little nooks and crannies for LFA to make their nests in. The leaf sheaths of palm trees and tea plants are a very common spot to find LFA and other pests. They're also found at the base of water tanks, and they have a weird affinity for electricity, so make sure to check near outlets and electrical boxes. We have also heard of them shorting out pumps and things like that. If there's any weed mat or tarp lying around the area, make sure to check those too, because it makes a really good little fire ant habitat. This is a quick video about how to survey your property. There are many ways to treat little fire ants, and we'll go over all of them in just a second. But the main thing to remember is that the most important thing is to make sure to treat every 4 to 6 weeks until the ants are gone. Depending on the level of infestation, it may take up to a year or more to get rid of them. Treating too soon may lead to bait shyness by making the bait ineffective, and waiting too long may give the colony a chance to recover. When using pesticides, always remember to wear your PPE, or personal protective equipment. The minimum for all these baits we're going to use is a long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes, and gloves. And make sure to label all of your sprayers. None of these pesticides that we're going to talk about are restricted and do not require a license to apply. But be aware, if you own a landscaping or lawn care business, you can still treat for LFA as part of your yard maintenance, but you're not allowed to treat structures. If you wish to advertise as being a pest control company to treat little fire ants, you will need a pest control business license. This is different from the restricted use pesticide applicator license. Now we'll start to go over how to treat for LFA. First off, don't go to the store and buy anything that says kills fire ants. Make sure to pay attention to the active ingredient and the instructions. Fire ants is a common name for many ants that have a painful sting, so even if it claims to kill fire ants, it may be better for a different species, not the little fire ant. The methods we recommend were researched by the University of Hawaii CTAR and the Hawaii Ant Lab, but still, the main thing to remember is to stay on schedule and treat every 4 to 6 weeks. The first thing we'll talk about is gel baits. Using a gel bait is a good way to get the pesticide up into the trees. This mixture was created by the Hawaii Ant Lab. It's made up of oil, peanut butter, xanthan gum, and water. It can be mixed into both Tango and Provant, which we'll go over in a second. And this mixture must be used within 24 hours or becomes rancid and unusable. The ants are not attracted to it. Tango is one of the options you can use in the gel bait. The active ingredient is S-methoprene, which is an insect growth regulator. This sterilizes the queen and interrupts her egg laying. Because of this, Tango does not have a dramatic effect on ant populations until 3 or 4 months later, which is the average life cycle of worker ants. At this time, all the previous workers are dying off, and there are very few or no workers to replace them. Tango has a long shelf life by itself in the concentrate. This product is approved for use in fruit trees and in edible crops. Here is a quick and easy video to show you how to mix the gel bait properly. Provant is the other pesticide that can be mixed into the gel bait. The active ingredient is indoxacarb, which is a toxicant, so this will kill both workers and queens. This also has a long shelf life, just like Tango, but it cannot be used in fruit trees and edible crops. Now we'll talk about granular baits. These are another option for treating for fire ants other than the gel bait. These are little corn grits that are laced with oil and a toxicant to kill ants quickly. Granular baits work best for landscapes with no trees and mostly grasses and short shrubs. Granular bait should be applied when it's dry. If the ground is a little bit wet, the bait soaks up the water and there's no longer attractive to fire ants. You only need about 4 to 6 hours of dry weather for the bait to be effective. For the same reason, once a container has been opened, it's only good for about 3 months. We don't recommend mixing granulars with peanut butter as it coats the bait and prevents the ants from getting to the pesticide. We also don't suggest using bait stations. It's better to broadcast the bait over the entire yard. Ants don't smell to search for their food. They use their numbers to scout out a large area and hope to stumble across food. If the bait is broadcast and spread out, it increases the chance of the ants finding the bait versus all of it contained into one bait station. The first type of granular bait we'll talk about is Amdro. This kind of bait uses hydromethanol, which is a toxicant, and it cannot be used in fruit trees. Siesta is another brand of granular toxicant, and it works in almost the same way as Amdro, but it has a different active ingredient, which is metaflumizone. It's very similar as it has the same 2 to 3 month shelf life, but Siesta is labeled for use in citrus, nut, palm, and stone and fruit trees. All of the baits we have talked about so far are considered to have the lowest risks by the EPA. None of them show any harmful effects on mammals or birds. And the active ingredients in these pesticides are in such small quantities that it shouldn't affect these other animals. They're weighed for a tiny ant body. Although none of these products are labeled to be used in or around water, so make sure to stay away from streams and ocean water. The next thing we'll talk about is barrier treatments. These are good for applying on the borders of property to keep ants from coming over from a different infested property. This is a residual pesticide that lasts about 3 months. When ants and other insects try to cross the treated area, they die. These products come in both a granular and a spray form. Some brand names that we often see are Talstar, Bifen, Upstar, and Orthomax Home Defense. Common active ingredients are bifenthrin and cyfluthrin. When applying this, make sure to stay away from the treated area when it's wet, but once it's dry, then it is safe to touch. It's best not to apply baits and barriers at the same time. Do not use contact pesticides to manage your LFA infestation. This type of pesticide should be used to keep ants out of your house, other structures, and on the border of your property. But remember, these pesticides will also harm beneficial insects such as bees and butterflies, so do not spray them on vegetation and use them only in select areas. If you are part of a landscaping company, you cannot apply a barrier to any structures that you're working on, but you are allowed to apply it to the borders of the property. Structures can only be treated by a homeowner or the pest control company. On their own, LFA don't spread very quickly. They are hitchhikers and are moved around by people. To help prevent the spread of little fire ants, make sure to quarantine any mulch, potted plants, cinder, building materials, and any other objects that are left sitting for a long period of time. The barrier products we just talked about are a good way to create a quarantine zone. Apply the barrier to a flat area and place any new objects inside the barrier. If there are ants, they won't be able to escape and the item can be treated before it's moved onto the property. While working, if you see any new insects, plants, or animals, please report it to 643-PEST. You can either call them or go online. If you can, please take a picture or get a sample of the suspicious object. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and we hope that it's been helpful. For more information and helpful videos, you can go online to our website at biisc.org/LFA.